Yeah, hi guys. I just want to respond to a statement you made earlier before that the RBA is not responsible for cash and that's the responsibility of the banks. I would have thought, there was a time once when the RBA was responsible for managing the retail banks, and then obviously that got separated with APRA. But there was also a time when the RBA was responsible for cash distribution. So do you think that the decisions, or do you think it's a bit rich for the RBA to wash their hands of what was once your responsibility to both manage the banks and manage cash distribution by now wiping your hands of it?
Oh, well, my apologies, Senator, if I must have misspoke, because the RBA is absolutely responsible for wholesale banknote distribution. We're the sole issuer of banknotes, and we do take that obligation very seriously. And we also have a commitment to ensure that Australians who want access to cash can have access to it. So I wouldn't agree with the statement that we're washing our hands of it. Okay, then.
So given that you've accepted it's your responsibility, if the banks close their branches in the regions, do you accept it's your responsibility to step up and provide cash to those businesses in the regions or outer metropolitan centres where they need it?
So, Senator, we're responsible for the wholesale banknote leg of the cash cycle. So that's selling the notes from our depot, depot in Victoria, to the banks. And the banks then distribute those notes as they need for their own businesses and for their retail customers. So that's the leg of the cycle that we have responsibility for, and we absolutely accept our obligations in that leg of the cycle.
Okay, so, and I guess this is the problem. So you're now saying, from what I've just heard then, that you're not responsible for the retail distribution. You're just responsible for the wholesale distribution to the retail banks who then distribute onwards. But what happens when the retail banks disappear and pull their branches from the regions?
We don't have any responsibilities for how the banks set up their branch networks. As I say, we're responsible for wholesale banknote distribution. The banks are responsible for the retail leg. Okay, so, yeah, so and this is where this comes back. We're going in a circular argument here because initially, the RBA included the CBA as the original bank set up by Andrew Fisher was the RBA and the CBA, and then over the years, all these powers have been devolved into various little groups, including APRA, the RBA, and now the CBA is now a private bank. So who's going to help the people in the regions who need cash? Because you're saying it's not your responsibility. The banks are saying, well, we're private, we're in the private market, we can do what we like. And APRA, well, I don't know where they are, but they clearly don't seem to be holding the banks to account to meet their community social licence to provide cash into the regions. So you don't think the RBA, it ultimately falls back onto the RBA to provide cash, even if the banks don't do it, retail banks don't do it? Well, the RBA is not responsible for the retail leg, as you said. It's based on the banks and they distribute those funds. But the RBA has committed in its corporate plan and is also working with the government as part of its strategic roadmap on payments to ensure that cash is available to those who need and want to use it. So there's a range of strategies that are being worked through for that, and which is why we're very focused on the fragility of the wholesale banknote distribution network to ensure that that is sustainable for the future because that is the first leg that gets the notes from ourselves to the banks. And so we're working very hard to ensure that that is a very stable leg of the cycle.
Okay, so do you know what you're going to suggest? What are you working on? You're saying you're working on something to get cash out to the regions. Because I know under the Constitution, the federal government is responsible for legal tender. So it has got a responsibility to distribute legal tender to whoever it is that needs it. Now, if they don't have access to electronic payments, which a lot of people in the regions don't for various reasons, or older people aren't comfortable using electronic payments, or immigrants who can't speak English as their first language don't necessarily feel comfortable using electronic payments, the federal government has a responsibility to get cash to those people who want it or need it, So do you accept the RBA as the only bank left under the federal government's remit, even though you yourself are independent as well, have a responsibility to get cash out to the people that need it?
Well, what I can say is that the bank is working with the industry, acknowledging that there is considerable fragilities in the bank cash distribution network, And we're working with the industry and various other players to ensure that we can put a framework in place where we have long-term stability of that ecosystem. Now, we haven't settled on an answer yet, but I believe you would have noted that the Governor has said that there's various models that are being looked at overseas. This is very much an international issue where cash usage has declined to the point where the infrastructure that underpins it is experiencing considerable fragility. So we're working with the industry to try and find a solution to that. We haven't got an answer today for you, but we're working to find one.
So is a public bank one of the options you're looking at, like the old-fashioned Commonwealth Bank before it was privatised?
Well, we're working with the industry and we don't rule anything in or out. We're still working to get a solution.
Well, why are you working with the industry? I mean, they've shafted the people. I mean, they've basically broken their social licence to serve the people, right? I mean, they make a lot of money. They make a combined $30 billion a year. I mean, it's not a question of you working with the industry. It's a question of you taking the whip hand to the industry and saying either do your job or we'll do it for you.
Well, we're working with the industry because there are a number of players. Cash distribution is a very complex system and we're working with all the players to ensure that we can set something up that is sustainable.
Okay.
Authorised G. Rennick, LNP Chermside.